What society tells us makes us a good woman is also coincidentally the thing that probably is holding us back with our horses. I'm unpacking a whole lot in this video. And we're also going to be talking about your leadership superpower based on your personality. I have four leadership superpowers that I want you to think about leaning into as a horsewoman that are going to help you to unlock whatever communication goals you have with your horse. If you're new here, I'm Ruby. I'm a whole horse stewardship trainer, and I have helped horses and humans just like you to have a deeper bond and better relationship for the last decade plus. And today we're going to be jumping into this thing that I see all the time, which is lovely, kind, well intended women being somewhat passive with their horses and having a hard time holding a boundary because they've been told from the time they were little girls that holding a boundary or holding a limit um, or being strong also makes them somehow rude or bossy or dominating or whatever else you name it. In fact, actually, please, you name it. Let me know in the comments what you've been told because I think this is a really important conversation to be airing out, and I'd love for you to jump in on it. So, the big thing is that as women, we've been told that we need to be passive or quiet or meant to be kind of a little bit more meek or mild, and that's what makes us a good woman, is by societal standards. And I do think times are changing here, but even still, I think about public figures that have a big voice and that use that big voice. I'm sure you can think of some and think of some of the names that they're called publicly. And I think that all of that is like really insidious in our own like DNA. And I'm not immune to this either. Like I definitely feel this as well with other humans. But I have learned from being around horses my whole entire life that horses don't think this way. They're not considering somebody that has a boundary to be mean or bossy or overbearing or whatever else. They're just thinking about it's a lot more pure than that. It's a lot more black and white. It's a lot more like this is a yes and that is a no, and that's just all that there is. And I've really learned a lot of this actually from raising toddlers. I think toddlers are very similar, where like if my daughter asked me for a cookie and it's breakfast time, I could be like, well, like, no, not right now, but like maybe later today. And cookies really aren't that good for your health. And all of that, like, kind of fluff makes me feel like a kinder mom, but it makes her like, well, is it a yes or am I gonna get a cookie or am I not gonna? If I push back, is there room? Is this a soft boundary? Can I like maybe like voice my my uh my dismay that I'm not going to get a cookie right now, and maybe that'll change her mind. But if I just say, nope, no cookies at breakfast time, I'm still being kind. I'm not being rude or mean in the way I say that. But that assuredness of like, nope, no cookies at breakfast time lets her just drop it. And she doesn't have to think about it anymore because she's like, oh, mom said no, I move on. And that's it. And she learns to trust my boundary and trust my word. And it doesn't make her think that I'm a mean mom. She's not like, dang it, why is my mom not like, maybe when she's 13, we might have different perspective then. But at 3 years old, me just saying no, no cookies at breakfast time with some certainty actually makes me more trustworthy because she's like, oh, mom's got me covered. And then later today, when I say, hey, look, I remember this morning when you asked me for a cookie and I said no, but here's a cookie now, that also feels really good that she's like, oh, mom remembered, right? And so our horses are very much the same. If we have just like a, nope, you can't run me over, it doesn't have to be like the way that, I think a lot of us have seen people in the past with horses, like, you know, uh, smack him on the neck and be like, get out of my space and you can't run me over and blah, 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 blah. Like that is pushing it too far. That's not a boundary. That's being mean. But if you say, you can't run me over, here's a line, don't cross it with some assuredness, your horse is going to respect that line. And on the other side, if you're like, please don't come any closer, and I'll back out of your space. And I don't really like it when you smudge me with your nose. So I'm just gonna back over here and please stay over there. Your horse is just gonna keep pushing that boundary, right? And I see this all the time, but I think that there is this really specific place, this fine line that we can stand on firmly, that we are kind and firm and our boundary is clear. And that is, I think, the actual kindest thing we can do for our horses, not this kind of like soft, um, like dismissive version of ourselves, and also not this like overpowering, loud and aggressive, but like something in between. And I think that's really where the power is. So I wanted to go into, over my time working with horses and horse people, I've noticed that there are four main personalities that have emerged both in horses and in people that it really helps me to think about this because I really believe there's no one size fits all approach to horse training or to teaching people. And so when I can kind of think about which type a horse or a person is, it can help to inform me both what their motivation is, why they're acting this way, as well as how I could maybe help them through this moment. So, if you're curious about what type you are, you can take the quiz below and that'll help you, but you may be able to pick it up just from this conversation. So, let's just find out. So, if you are a feeler, which is somebody who is super sensitive and you're also maybe not like the most ambitious, like you're maybe not like super like driven to go out and do a whole lot of things or to be super competitive, but you feel things really deeply and you're very, very sensitive and intuitive, your leadership superpower is in your emotional intelligence. You notice things that other people don't about your horse and about the people around you, and you are extremely emotionally intelligent, and you can use that as a superpower to know when to push and when to hold back. But your weakness as a feeler is that a lot of times you're going to be overthinking and overreading into these situations, and you're going to be worried about what your boundary might do to somebody else or what their reaction might be to your boundary. And I'm just going to let you know you can let go of that, especially with horses. They don't worry about that kind of stuff and they're not thinking that way. So you don't need to take on that piece of worrying about how your boundary is going to impact their emotional state, but you should definitely lean into your ability to read their emotional state as a means of figuring out when you need to push back and when you can hold your own ground. Feeler has the ability to be an incredible leader, an incredible person with a horse. And when they get it right and they know how to like play this little game and move with their horse's emotions, these are the people that really look like they're like seamlessly, effortlessly riding and almost like they're reading their horse's mind, because I think on some level you kind of are. Okay, if you are an achiever, the achiever is somebody who's also very sensitive, but you're really goal oriented, you're super driven, you can be very competitive. Your leadership superpower is in your ability to give your horse a pep talk. You can motivate almost anybody and any horse to get things done. You're a hard worker and you bring people right along on that journey with you. And so the more you can kind of lean into your ability to be like, to like uplift those around you and to push them to places that they didn't know they could even go to, you're really going to find that that's a really sweet spot for your personality and your ability to be a partner for your horse. Your weakness, however, is sometimes you're going to try to be pushing people too far or horses too far. And you might find that you're pushing your horse to do things that they're not quite ready for yet. And then you're wondering why it's not going well. So make sure that you're taking that moment to really consider, like, is my horse actually ready for this next step that I'm pushing them to? Or do I need to take a little bit more time, lay a little bit more groundwork first? If you are a cruiser, which is the person who is maybe less sensitive, they tend to be very like reliable, very steady, very laid back. They're pretty chill. If this is you, your leadership superpower is in your ability to let things roll off. You are very stoic. You have a lot of integrity. You're very reliable. Your horse knows that no matter what's going on in the world, you are an unshakable, safe place for them to go to. And particularly horses that are a bit more reactive or volatile, sometimes these are feelers or achievers, they really gravitate toward a cruiser because you are just this steady, quiet source of confidence all the time. And so you are going to find that when you are holding a boundary, you can do it with this quiet stoicism that is just very reliable and nourishing and like very salt of the earth for your horse. Your weakness, however, as a cruiser might be that you let too many things roll off and then you wonder why you're getting steamrolled because you're so quiet and stoic with your boundaries that maybe you're letting some things slide that really shouldn't be sliding and there's kind of some leaks in your boundaries. So make sure that you're really checking in with yourself frequently to make sure that you're actually holding enough boundaries and that you're not kind of letting things go just because you're being so laid back and so relaxed. The last type is the voyager. This is the person who is curious, they're inquisitive, they want to go explore and do things, and they're also not overly sensitive, but they are pretty ambitious. They like want to go like check things out and explore, and they're very curious and they ask a lot of questions. So if you are a voyager, your relationships, your leadership superpower with your horse is that you are inquisitive. You are able to really figure out what the root of the problem is, both in yourself and your horse, and you're able to really like kind of think about it and figure it out and work through it and look for answers and research. And this can really be to your benefit and your weak. This is also your weakness, though, because sometimes things don't need to be researched. Sometimes you just need to trust your gut and just know that this isn't right and that you need to hold a boundary here. And so that could be something to really work on, is learning when it's time to go research and be curious and be inquisitive and ask the questions, and when you just need to say, I don't really care what the root cause of this is, it's just not safe, or it's not okay, or it's crossing a boundary for me. So these are some really important things to think about. I've given you a lot to reflect on. This might even be helpful, like get out a journal, and like I wasn't expecting this conversation to go this deep, but maybe do a little bit of journaling about your boundary style with horses, as well as with people, and maybe what horses have taught you about your boundaries with people. I'd love to hear in the comments. I feel like this could be like a whole book on like boundaries and what horses teach us about boundaries. And I actually am teaching a whole clinic on this coming up. So I will also link the page to that below so that you can check out the clinic if you are interested. It's called Sacred Limits. There is a virtual version as well as an in-person version. And I would love to have you there. Make sure to hug your horse for me.